A passenger jet sits at the gate, moments from departure. In first class, a young black woman in a hoodie is confronted by an older, wealthy passenger. "You don't belong here," the woman sneers, demanding the flight attendant remove her. "This isn't a student lounge. Call security." The flight attendant hesitates, the cabin watching, as the woman accuses the girl of being a security risk. The girl sits, poised and silent, but the passenger made one mistake. She didn't just pick on any passenger. She picked on the daughter of the most powerful woman in the room, who is about to walk onto the plane. The air in the American Airlines flagship lounge at Dulles International, IAD, was a carefully curated blend of hushed conversations, the distant clinking of ice in highball glasses, and the faint citrus and sandalwood scent pumped through the vents. It was a sanctuary designed to separate the truly important from the merely important, and the merely important from the masses churning through the main terminal. Maya Hayes sat in a plush armchair by the window, watching the 777s lumber to and from their gates. At 23, Maya was no stranger to these lounges, but she never felt entirely comfortable in them. She was in her travel uniform, black Lululemon leggings, a well-worn pair of white sneakers, and an oversized dark grey hoodie with Georgetown Law emblazoned across the chest in heavy blue letters. Her noise-cancelling headphones were a shield, piping a lo-fi playlist into her ears as she scrolled through case briefs on her laptop. She was flying home to Los Angeles for a 2-week break, and the grind of her 2L year felt like a physical weight on her shoulders. Across the lounge, Caroline Foster was holding court, or more accurately, she was berating an airline employee over the phone. "It is unacceptable," Caroline announced, her voice a sharp, expensive blade that sliced through the lounge's decorum. "I am an executive platinum, million-miler, and a concierge key member. When I book a flagship first ticket, I expect a seamless experience. The upholstery in the quiet room is stained. It's simply not up to standard." Caroline Foster was a woman in her late 50s who looked as though she had been assembled, not born. Her blonde hair was a helmet of precise, immovable layers. Her white St. John knit suit was immaculate, adorned with a heavy gold necklace. She radiated an aura of expensive perfume and profound dissatisfaction. She was a senior partner at Covington & Associates, one of DC's most formidable law firms, and her entire life was a seamless experience. She ensured it. Her eyes scanned the lounge, cataloguing the other passengers. A senator she recognized from a fundraiser, a tech CEO she'd had dealings with. And then, her eyes landed on Maya. Caroline's lip curled, almost imperceptibly. She muted her phone call. She stared openly. She saw a young, black girl, dressed like she was heading to a dorm, occupying one of the best seats by the window. Her laptop was propped on a battered backpack that had seen better days. How did that get in here? Caroline thought, the question sharp and immediate. She prided herself on pattern recognition. And this was a deviation. This was a mistake. Caroline's mind, trained to find discrepancies, spun a narrative. The girl was probably flying on a buddy pass from a relative who worked the ramp. Or maybe she was one of those diversity initiative summer interns the airlines were always trumpeting, given a single, unearned taste of luxury. Or, her mind darkened, she'd snuck in. It happened. Standards were collapsing everywhere. Maya, feeling the weight of the stare, looked up. She saw the blonde woman glaring at her. Maya offered a small, polite, and deeply tired smile before looking back at her screen. This small gesture of dismissal, of equality, enraged Caroline. It was an acknowledgement that Maya knew she was being watched, and an assertion that she belonged there anyway. Caroline snapped her fingers to get the attention of a lounge attendant walking by. "Excuse me," she said, not waiting for him to approach. That individual. She gestured with her chin toward Maya. Is she supposed to be in the flagship lounge? It seems highly irregular. The attendant, a young man named Ben, glanced at Maya. She's a first-class passenger, Ma'am. We checked her credentials at the desk. Are you sure? Caroline pressed, her voice dripping with skepticism. Did you check her ID? Her ticket? She seems, lost. Yes, Ma'am. She's ticketed. Is there anything I can get for you? Competence, Caroline muttered and unmuted her phone. No, not you, David. I'm back. As I was saying. She continued her tirade, but her focus was now split. She watched Maya. She saw her get up and walk to the buffet, moving with an easy, athletic grace. She took a bottle of water and an apple. Uncouth, Caroline thought, eating like a commoner. The tension was a low hum in the air. Maya felt it. She knew that stare. It was the "how did you get here" stare, the "you don't belong" stare. She'd felt it at Georgetown, she'd felt it in preparatory school, and she'd felt it in 100 other places just like this. Usually, she could ignore it. But today, after 3 exams, and only 4 hours of sleep, the stare felt like sandpaper on her skin. 10 minutes later, the overhead speaker crackled. We are now pleased to announce the pre-boarding of American Airlines Flight 73, service to Los Angeles. We invite our passengers in flagship first to begin boarding at gate B42. Caroline snapped her briefcase shut. She stood, adjusting her knit jacket. She watched as Maya packed her laptop, slipped her headphones around her neck, and swung her backpack over one shoulder. Caroline moved with precision, positioning herself to be the first one at the agent's desk, cutting just in front of a startled senator. She wanted to be first. She wanted to be on that plane, settled with her champagne, before that girl even got on. Maya, meanwhile, waited patiently for the cluster of eager passengers to clear. She always waited. Her mother had taught her. Never be in a hurry to get on a plane. It's not going anywhere without you. Let them all fight. You arrive when you arrive. Caroline handed her boarding pass to the gate agent, Susan. You're checking this carefully, I hope, Caroline said, loud enough for Maya, now walking up, to hear. There's been a lot of confusion in the lounge today. We can't be too careful about who gets on. Susan, the gate agent, just smiled a corporate smile. Seat 1G. Welcome aboard, Miss Foster. Caroline strode down the jet bridge. Maya stepped up. Hi, Susan. Hi, Maya. How was the lounge? Your mum hasn't arrived yet, I see, Susan said warmly. It was fine, thanks. And no, she's cutting it close as usual. Said she had a call with her clerks that ran long. She's on her way. Well, you go ahead and get settled. Seat 2J. Have a great flight. Caroline, who had paused on the jet bridge to check her phone, heard every word. Susan. Maya. They knew her? This wasn't a diversity intern. This was something else. And the mention of her mum, Caroline's mind spun. A politician? A corporate bigwig? It didn't matter. The girl was still dressed like a vagrant. She hurried onto the aircraft, eager to settle into her pod and put this annoyance behind her. She was in 1G, the aisle seat. She stowed her carry-on and looked at the manifest in her head. 1J, the window was empty. Good. Maybe she'd have the row to herself. She sat, accepted a glass of pre-departure champagne from the flight attendant, and opened the Wall Street Journal. A moment later, Maya walked into the cabin. She smiled at the flight attendant, Liam, and turned right, toward the second row. She stopped at 2J, the window pod directly behind Caroline's empty neighbor seat. Caroline watched over the top of her paper. She watched Maya effortlessly swing her heavy backpack into the overhead bin, revealing the Georgetown law clearly on her back. Then she slid into the seat. This was the final straw. It was one thing to be in the lounge. It was another thing entirely to be in the cabin. And not just in the cabin, but in the pod right behind her. Caroline Foster unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. Liam, the lead flight attendant for the first-class cabin, was a consummate professional. He had a sixth sense for trouble, and his sensors were buzzing. He'd seen the look on the woman in 1G's face when the young lady in 2J walked past. It was a look of curdled milk. He was moving toward Caroline, intending to de-escalate whatever she was planning with a preemptive offer of another drink when she stood. "Excuse me," Caroline said. Her voice wasn't a request. It was a summons. Liam stopped. "Yes, ma'am? Can I get you anything?" "You can," Caroline said, pointing a perfectly manicured finger directly at Maya, who was in the process of plugging her headphones into the seat's console. "You can get her out of that seat." Liam blinked. The cabin, still filling with the murmur of other first-class passengers settling in, went quiet. The senator in 3G looked up. A man in 3A, Mark, who looked like a tech entrepreneur, discreetly angled his phone. "Ma'am?" Liam said, his customer service smile tightening. I said, "I think there's been a mistake. This person," she spat the word, "is clearly in the wrong cabin. I'm sure she just got lost. The economy cabin is that way." She gestured vaguely toward the back of the plane. Maya sighed. She'd been hoping to avoid this. She paused her music and slowly took off her headphones, letting them rest on her shoulders. She turned her body in the pod, her expression one of immense, studied patience. "Is there a problem?" Maya asked, her voice low and calm. Caroline seized on the interaction. "Yes, there's a problem. You're in a first-class seat. I'm quite certain you don't have a first-class ticket." Liam stepped between them, holding up a placating hand. "Ma'am, I have the passenger manifest. She is assigned to seat 2J. "I don't care what your little list says," Caroline snapped. "Look at her. This is not a student lounge. This is an international first-class cabin. I pay over $15,000 for this ticket. I don't expect to be seated next to college kids in hoodies." "My hoodie," Maya said, her voice still quiet but gaining a sharp, clear edge, "is from my law school. And my ticket," she held up her phone, the screen showing her boarding pass, "is just as valid as yours. I'm in the correct seat. Perhaps you should check your boarding pass and find your seat." The directness of the response, the lack of fear, set Caroline's teeth on edge. This girl was not just lost, she was defiant. "How dare you?" Caroline whispered, stepping closer. "You're probably on a buddy pass, or maybe you used a stolen upgrade certificate. I know how it works. You people find ways to get where you don't belong." The "you people" hung in the air, thick and toxic. Liam's face went from professional to grim. "Ma'am, that is an entirely inappropriate accusation. I need you to return to your seat now. You are interfering with boarding." "You need to do your job," Caroline shot back, her voice rising, drawing the attention of everyone. "I am a million-miler. I am concierge key. I am telling you, I do not feel safe with this person here. How do I know she's not a security risk? She looks agitated. She's probably using a fake ID or a stolen ticket. I demand you remove her from this cabin. Call the captain. Call security." This was her trump card. Security risk. The magic words that could bend any airline employee to her will. Maya simply stared at her. She didn't plead. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She just held Caroline's gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of profound disappointment and cold anger. The silence from Maya seemed to infuriate Caroline even more than an argument would have. What's wrong? Caroline taunted, her voice a low sneer. Cat got your tongue? Realized you've been caught? Liam, meanwhile, was speaking into the intercom phone to the gate. Susan, I have a disruptive passenger in 1G. She is refusing to sit and is harassing another passenger. Caroline heard him. You're reporting me, she shrieked, outraged. I'm the victim here. I'm the one paying your salary. I'll have your job for this. What's your name? Liam? Is that it? Well, Liam, you'll be cleaning toilets in Tulsa by next week. I will be reporting you to American Airlines Corporate. Ma'am, Liam said, his voice now devoid of any warmth. You are causing a disturbance. You have made baseless accusations against another passenger. You have refused a crew member's instruction. If you do not sit down in your assigned seat immediately and cease this harassment, you will be removed from this aircraft. You wouldn't dare, Caroline hissed. Try me, Liam said. The standoff was absolute. Caroline, red-faced and trembling with rage. Liam, standing firm. And Maya, watching them both, a silent, unwilling judge. Mark, the passenger in 3A, was no longer being discreet. His phone was up, openly recording the entire exchange. He knew this was gold. What is the hold-up? Susan, the gate agent, appeared at the front of the cabin, her face a mask of frustration. Captain wants to know why we're not closing the door. We're already 10 minutes behind. Caroline saw her chance to bypass the insubordinate flight attendant. Susan, thank goodness! This man, she pointed at Liam, is refusing to deal with a serious security threat. This girl, she jabbed her finger at Maya, refuses to leave the first-class cabin. She's clearly an imposter, and he's protecting her. Susan looked at Caroline, then at Liam, then at Maya. Her eyes widened slightly in recognition. Miss Foster, she said, her voice tight. I personally checked Ms. Hayes's boarding pass. She is a ticketed, confirmed first-class passenger in seat 2J. I don't care. Caroline was beyond reason. Look at her. She's probably on some watch list. Are you going to be responsible when she does something? I want her off this plane. Maya had heard enough. She slowly, deliberately, began to unbuckle her seatbelt. Fine, she said, her voice resonating through the silent cabin. You win, I'll go. Maya, no, Liam said, turning to her. You are a paying passenger. You don't have to move. It's not worth it, Maya said, her eyes locked on Caroline. It's not worth the delay for everyone else. I'll wait for my mum in the terminal. Your mum? Caroline laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, is your mum coming to save you? What's she going to do? Yell at me too? Is she the manager of a Cinnabon at the food court? Maya stopped, her hand on the armrest. A shadow crossed her face. You should stop talking, she said, very quietly. Or what? You'll call your Cinnabon manager Mum? No, a new voice said, clear and resonant as a bell from the cabin door. She'll call me. The voice was not loud, but it had a quality of absolute, effortless authority. It cut through the tension, and every head in the cabin swiveled to the front. Standing in the doorway, having just stepped off the jet bridge, was a woman in her late 50s. She was tall, slender, and wore a simple but exquisitely tailored dark navy pantsuit. Her hair was cut short, framing a face that was both stern and weary, but now sharp with concern. She carried a sleek leather briefcase in one hand. She was, in a word, formidable. Caroline Foster didn't recognize her. She just saw another woman, albeit a well-dressed one, and another obstacle. I'm sorry, Caroline said, turning to the newcomer. But the cabin is closed. You'll have to... wait. The woman ignored her completely. Her eyes were locked on Maya. Maya, baby, are you all right? What's going on? I'm fine, Mum, Maya said, her body visibly relaxing, the tension draining from her shoulders. This woman was just insistent that I don't belong here. The woman's gaze shifted from Maya to Caroline. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. It was a look of pure, analytical ice. "This woman," the newcomer repeated, her voice dangerously soft. Liam, the flight attendant, looked as if he'd seen a ghost. His eyes were wide, and he suddenly snapped to attention. "Ma'am, welcome aboard. I apologize for the commotion." Susan, the gate agent, stepped forward, her face pale. "Ma'am, we're so sorry. We were just handling a passenger situation." Caroline was completely baffled by their deference. "Who is this?" she demanded. "Her mother? Are you here to make excuses for her?" As I was telling her, this is first class. Her attire is simply not appropriate. And she's been causing a disturbance. The woman, Maya's mother, slowly walked down the aisle and stood directly in front of Caroline, who was still blocking the path. The woman was slightly taller than her, and where Caroline was all sharp, frantic energy, this woman was a pillar of stillness. "My daughter's attire," the woman said, her elocution perfect, "is her university sweatshirt. She is a student at Georgetown Law. Her behavior, from what I am gathering, has been to sit in her assigned seat. Your behavior, on the other hand, appears to be harassment. And you are delaying the flight." The casual factual mention of Georgetown Law seemed to confirm Caroline's suspicions. "Aha, just a student." "Georgetown?" Caroline scoffed. "Impressive. So you're a lawyer, then? Or a professor, perhaps? Came to fight your daughter's battles? You should have taught her about dress codes. Some places still have standards, you know." The woman stared at Caroline for a long, silent beat. "I am indeed a lawyer," she said. She then looked past Caroline to the empty seat at 1J, the window. "And that is my seat. So if you would be so kind as to step out of my way." Caroline was not accustomed to being dismissed. "I am not moving until this situation is resolved. This girl," she pointed again at Maya, "is a security risk. And you, frankly, are complicit. I will not be silenced." "Ma'am, please," Liam begged, his voice cracking. "You must sit down." It was then that Mark, the businessman in 3A who had been filming, let out a choked sound. He had zoomed in on the new woman's face. He knew that face. He'd seen it on C-SPAN. He'd seen it in the New York Times. He'd seen it in photos, robed, standing next to the president. "Oh my God," Mark whispered, his phone shaking slightly. "Holy. Oh my God." Caroline heard him and turned. "What? What is it?" Mark looked at Caroline, then at the woman, then back at Caroline. You have no idea who you're talking to, do you? I'm talking to an entitled mother," Caroline snapped. "No," Mark said, his voice reverent. "You're not. That is Justice Evelyn Hayes." Silence. A deep, profound, pin-drop silence fell over the first-class cabin. Even the background hum of the APU seemed to fade. Caroline Foster's brain, so quick to find patterns, stalled. It tried to process the name. Justice Hayes? There was only one. Evelyn Hayes, appointed 8 years ago. The court's swing vote. The most powerful, closely watched woman in the entire federal government. Caroline's face, which had been flushed with rage, drained of all color. She looked back at the woman. She saw her now. Not just a well-dressed black woman. She saw the face from the news. The woman who wrote the majority opinion in Westlake vs. Digital Trust. The woman whose questions during oral arguments were legendary for dismantling attorneys twice her age. "Justice?" Caroline whispered, her throat dry. What justice?" "Evelyn Hayes, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, did not smile. I am here to fly to Los Angeles with my daughter, Ms. Hayes, in seats 1J and 2J, both of which, she added, her voice a scalpel, are fully paid for by the U.S. government. Now, for the last time, move. Caroline Foster, a partner at a D.C. law firm whose entire career depended on her reputation and access, stumbled backward, collapsing into a seat, 1G, as if her legs had been cut out from under her. She had just, in front of witnesses, accused a Supreme Court justice's daughter of being a criminal. Justice Hayes didn't spare Caroline another glance. She turned to her daughter. "Are you truly all right, Maya?" she asked, her voice softening, all traces of ice gone, replaced by pure maternal warmth. "I'm fine, Mom. Really. Just embarrassed and tired," Maya murmured, sinking back into her seat. "You have nothing to be embarrassed about. Ever," Evelyn said, her voice firm. She placed her briefcase in the overhead bin above her seat, 1J, and then, before sitting, turned to Liam. "Liam, is it?" she asked. Liam swallowed. "Yes, Justice." "You handled yourself with professionalism. Thank you for defending my daughter's right to be here." "I thank you, Ma'am," Liam stammered, his face flooding with relief. Evelyn then looked at Susan, the gate agent. "Susan, you may close the door. We are ready for departure." "Yes, Justice," Susan said, and practically ran from the cabin. The door sealed with a heavy thunk. The engines began to whine. The spell was broken. Caroline Foster, however, was in the midst of a full-blown, ice-cold panic. Her career, her reputation, her life. She had just committed professional suicide. She had to fix this. She had to apologize. She unbuckled her seatbelt again, just as the plane was about to push back. She lurched out of her seat and knelt in the aisle next to Justice Hayes's pod. "Justice," she whispered, her voice hoarse and desperate. The entire cabin was shamelessly, silently listening. "Justice Hayes, please. I had no idea. I am so sorry." Justice Hayes, who had just opened her own case file, looked down at the kneeling woman with an expression of profound disinterest. "Sorry for what, Miss Foster?" Caroline choked out. "Caroline Foster. I'm a partner at Covington & Associates in D.C. I'm just so sorry for the misunderstanding." At the mention of Covington & Associates, Justice Hayes's eyes sharpened. It was one of the most prominent appellate firms in the country. Its lawyers argued before her court routinely. "A misunderstanding, Ms. Foster?" the justice queried, her voice dangerously academic, as if she were questioning a lawyer during an oral argument. "What precisely was misunderstood?" I was concerned about security," Caroline stammered, falling back on her original disastrous script. With the hoodie and her race," Justice Hayes finished for her. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. "Let us not mince words. You saw a young black woman, and your pattern recognition, the one I am sure you are so proud of, identified her as a threat. You identified her as other. You identified her as someone who did not belong." No, it wasn't. It wasn't that," Caroline pleaded, tears of pure, selfish terror welling in her eyes. "It was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I'm not like that." "You are exactly like that," Justice Hayes said, her voice cutting. "You harassed my daughter. You accused her of theft. You attempted to use the flight crew to enact your own personal prejudice. You called her a security risk to have her forcibly removed. And then, when I, her mother, arrived, you insulted us both, assuming we were, and I believe your words were, a Cinnabon manager and her wayward child. She paused, letting the words hang. You did not make a mistake, Ms. Foster. You made a series of deliberate choices. The only mistake, from your perspective, is that you chose the wrong target. You assumed we had no power. You were wrong. Liam, who had been watching this with a grim sort of satisfaction, saw his moment. The plane was pushing back, and the safety video was starting. A passenger kneeling in the aisle was a federal violation. Ms. Foster, Liam said, his voice now booming with the full authority of the flight crew. Return to your seat and fasten your seatbelt. Now! Caroline scrambled back into 1G, her body shaking. She fumbled with the belt. She was trapped. She was sitting mere feet from the woman she had just humiliated herself in front of. A woman who held her entire professional world in the palm of her hand. The plane taxied. The safety video played. And Caroline Foster sat there, her Wall Street Journal forgotten on the floor as her life unraveled in her mind. She hadn't just insulted a justice. She had insulted Evelyn Hayes, the most respected and perhaps most feared, liberal-leaning moderate on the bench. A woman known for her photographic memory and her absolute lack of patience for sloppy arguments or bad faith actors. Covington and Associates, her firm. They had 2 major cases pending before the court this term. One on intellectual property, and another— oh God, no. She felt her stomach drop. The case was ACLU VETA, Department of Transportation. A landmark case challenging racial profiling by TSA agents in airport screenings. Caroline Foster, head of the firm's appellate practice, had just been video recorded by multiple passengers, racially profiling a black woman in an airport. A woman who happened to be the daughter of the likely swing vote on that very case. She wasn't just fired. She was a liability. She was a walking, talking, screaming conflict of interest that could get her firm disqualified and sanctioned. She began to hyperventilate. Liam, noticing her distress, leaned over. "Ma'am, do you need medical assistance?" Caroline shook her head, unable to speak. "Good," Liam said, his voice a bare whisper. "Then I suggest you close your eyes and remain silent for the duration of this 5-hour flight. Because if you say one more word to Ms. Hayes or her mother, I will have the authorities meet you at the gate for interfering with a flight crew." Caroline Foster shrunk into her $15,000 pod and, for the first time in her life, did exactly as she was told. The 5-hour flight from Washington to Los Angeles became a masterclass in silent, agonizing tension. For Justice Hayes and Meyer, it was a return to normalcy. Once the plane reached cruising altitude, they ordered ginger ales. Liam, eager to make amends for the cabin's atmosphere, treated them with a deference usually reserved for visiting royalty, which, in a way, they were. "Mum, you really didn't have to," Meyer murmured, leaning forward from her pod so they could speak quietly. "Yes, I did," Evelyn replied, not looking up from her brief. "I am tired of it, Meyer. I am tired of you having to justify your existence. You earned your seat at Georgetown. You earned this ticket. You will not be made to feel small in a space you occupy by right." "I know, but—" "Cinnabon manager?" Meyer chuckled, shaking her head. That was a new one. Her lack of imagination was, perhaps, her most offensive quality, Evelyn said, a rare, small smile touching her lips. "Now tell me about your contracts exam. Did Professor Alito Clone give you the statutory interpretation question I predicted?" They talked. They discussed case law, LA gossip, and what they would have for dinner when they landed. They were a mother and daughter, slipping into their familiar, comfortable rhythm, effectively erasing Caroline Foster from their reality. This, more than any shouting, was the true demonstration of power. Caroline wasn't even worth their airspace. For Caroline, every second was a fresh hell. She sat, rigid, in 1G. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't read. She couldn't work. All she could do was think. She could hear the low murmur of their conversation from the pods behind her, the casual, brilliant way they spoke, the easy references to legal theory, the laughter. It was the sound of a world she had desperately clawed her way into, a world she had just been summarily ejected from. She tried to draft an email on her phone. To Managing Partner, Covington & Associates. Subject, urgent matter. Personal, dear David. A deeply unfortunate incident occurred on my flight to LAX today. She deleted it. What could she say? I was filmed being a racist to a Supreme Court justice's daughter? Dear David, there has been a misunderstanding involving Justice Hayes. She deleted it. It sounded weak, pathetic. Her mind raced. She needed to get ahead of this. But how? The plane's Wi-Fi was slow, but her phone buzzed with a few iMessage previews coming through. From Sarah, her associate. Caroline, where are you? The video. Is it you? From James, another partner. Call me, now. From David, managing partner. Do not talk to anyone. Call me before you get off that plane. Her blood ran cold. The video. Mark, the passenger in 3A, had wasted no time. As soon as the plane hit 10,000 feet and the Wi-Fi signal clicked on, he had uploaded his 90-second clip. He hadn't tagged the justice. He was smarter than that. He tagged the airline, a few popular travel blogs, and a well-known progressive activist group on X, formerly Twitter. His caption was simple. Disgusting behavior on AA73 today. Entitled Karen, in 1G, demands flight attendant remove a young black woman, in 2J, from first class, calls her a security risk. Karen gets put in her place. The video was clear. It had captured Caroline jabbing her finger. It had captured her saying, "You don't belong here." It had captured her sneering, "Call security." It had captured her yelling, "I'll have your job." It did not, however, capture Justice Hayes. Mark had, out of respect or fear, stopped filming the moment she walked on. But the internet didn't need the justice. It just needed Caroline. Within an hour, the video had 1 million views. The internet sleuths of X and TikTok were on the case. Wait, zoom in on her bag. That's a Covington & Associates briefcase tag. That's her, Caroline Foster. She's a partner there. Oh, this is rich. She's a high-powered DC lawyer. Someone find her LinkedIn. By the time the flight began its descent into Los Angeles, Caroline Foster and Ajak Covington Karen were trending. Her photo, name, and professional biography were circulating with terrifying speed. Caroline, unable to see any of this, was still desperately trying to formulate a plan. She would get off the plane. She would call David. She would... What? Beg? She would send an apology. A crate of wine? A donation to a charity in the justice's name? She looked at her reflection in the dark screen of the in-flight monitor. She saw a terrified, crumbling woman. Meanwhile, Liam, the flight attendant, made a final pass through the cabin. He stopped at Justice Hayes's seat. "Justice Hayes, Ms. Hayes," he said quietly. "We're about 20 minutes from landing. I just wanted to let you know that I've filed a full incident report with corporate. It includes a detailed transcript of Ms. Foster's threats and her discriminatory language." "Thank you, Liam. That is appreciated," Evelyn said. "Also," he added, "I have spoken to our ground staff. The moment we land, a representative from our flagship team will meet you at the gate. They will have a private electric cart ready to escort you directly to your car service, so you won't have to deal with any further issues in the terminal." "That is exceptionally thoughtful," Evelyn said. "It's the least we can do. And Ms. Hayes, he said, looking at Maya. "On behalf of the airline, I am deeply sorry for what you experienced today. It should never have happened." "Thank you, Liam," Maya said, giving him a genuine, if tired, smile. Liam then walked past them to Caroline's pod. He leaned down, his voice a flat, cold whisper. "Ms. Foster, just so you are aware, upon landing, I will be filing a formal request with American Airlines to have your concierge key and executive platinum status permanently revoked for passenger misconduct and crew harassment. Have a nice day." He didn't wait for a reply. He walked back to the galley. Caroline felt the first, sharp-edged piece of her old life break off and fall away. The plane touched down at LAX with a gentle bump, rolling down the long runway under the hazy, orange-tinged sky of a Southern California evening. As it taxied to the gate, the normal, cheerful bustle of landing, phones clicking on, bags being zipped, was absent in the first-class cabin. The silence was thick and heavy. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed off. Justice Hayes and Maya stood, gathering their few items. Caroline Foster remained frozen in her seat, as if she were strapped to it. She watched them, her eyes wide. She was trying to memorize an apology, a final, desperate plea. "Justice. Justice Hayes," she started to say, her voice a dry croak. Evelyn Hayes zipped her briefcase. She didn't turn. She didn't acknowledge her. It was the most complete, devastating dismissal Caroline had ever experienced. It was as if she had ceased to exist. The jet bridge connected, and the cabin door opened. Liam stood at the door. "Justice Hayes, Ms. Hayes, please take your time." A woman in a sharp red American Airlines blazer was waiting at the door. "Justice Hayes, I'm Maria, the flagship services manager. We have a cart for you right here." Evelyn and Maya stepped off the plane. Caroline, seeing her last chance evaporate, fumbled for her own bags and scrambled into the aisle, trying to follow them. "Ma'am," Liam said, stepping directly in her path, his body physically blocking her exit. "Please allow our other first-class passengers to deplane first. You can wait." "What? No, I need to." "You will wait," Liam commanded. The senator, Mark, and the other passengers filed past, giving Caroline a wide berth, their expressions a mix of pity and disgust. By the time Caroline was finally allowed to exit the plane, Justice Hayes and Maya were long gone, whisked away on an electric cart through the secure corridors of the terminal. Caroline stumbled into the terminal and stopped. It was chaos. A bright light flashed in her face. "Ms. Foster, is that you? TMZ, did you really get in a fight with a Supreme Court Justice's daughter? Caroline, over here, did you call her a security risk?" A half-dozen paparazzi, tipped off by a stringer who had seen Mark's viral video and cross-referenced the flight number and passenger name, were swarming the gate. Caroline had never experienced this. She was a DC power player. She operated in quiet, carpeted rooms and exclusive restaurants. This was Hollywood. This was a nightmare. "No comment," she muttered, pulling her suitcase and trying to push through the wall of cameras. "Is it true you're a racist, Carolyn? Is Covington and Associates a racist law firm? Did Justice Hayes have you thrown off the flight?" She ducked her head, her face burning, and practically ran toward the terminal, the cameras flashing behind her, the questions echoing down the hall. She finally found a bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely type her password. It exploded. 58 text messages, 212 emails, 34 missed calls. The first call was from David Miller, the managing partner of Covington. She hit redial. He picked up on the first ring. "Caroline." His voice was not angry. It was dead. It was the voice of a man calculating financial damages. "Where are you?" "David, David, I'm at LAX. I just landed. I can explain. It was a complete misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding when you jabbed your finger at her, Caroline? Was it a misunderstanding when you told the flight attendant you'd have his job? Was it a misunderstanding when you told a 23-year-old law student she didn't belong? You've seen the video. It was a statement, not a question. Everyone has seen the video, Caroline. Everyone. It's been on CNN. It's the #1 story on Above the Law. The Washington Post has called my cell phone 3 times. The only reason your name isn't in their article yet is because I gave them a no comment while we conduct an internal review. David, please, she begged, a sob catching in her throat. She was dressed. I didn't know who she was. There was a long, terrible silence on the other end of the line. When David spoke again, his voice was a razor. That, Caroline, is the single worst defense you could have possibly offered. I didn't know she was powerful. You think that helps? You think it's okay to do that to a Cinnabon manager's daughter? You're telling me the only reason you regret it is because you harassed the wrong black person? No, that's not what I mean. It's exactly what you mean. We've spent 2 decades building this firm's reputation. Our appellate practice lives and dies on its credibility with the bench. And you, in 90 seconds, have just lit a torch to all of it. You haven't just embarrassed yourself. You've compromised the firm. You've compromised me. What about the ACLU vs. Doe T case? She whispered, her worst fear bubbling up. What about it? You're off it. Obviously. You're a material witness to the very thing the case is about. We'll probably have to file for a recusal, or God forbid, withdraw as counsel. Do you have any idea how much that will cost us? In fees? In reputation? David, what are we going to do? She asked, her voice small. We aren't going to do anything. You are going to go to your hotel. You will not speak to anyone. You will not post on any social media. You will not reply to a single email. You are on immediate, indefinite, unpaid administrative leave. An emergency meeting of the equity partners has been called for 8 a.m. tomorrow. You should probably hire your own lawyer, Caroline, because right now, the only thing the partners are discussing is how to invoke the moral turpitude clause in your partnership agreement. The line clicked dead. Caroline Foster slid down the stall wall, her $4,000 knit suit brushing the dirty floor. She had lost. She had lost her job. She had lost her reputation. She had lost everything. The emergency partners meeting at Covington & Associates was less a deliberation and more a damage control triage. The video, by morning, was unavoidable. It was playing on Morning Joe. It was being dissected on The View. It was the lead story on every legal blog in the nation. David Miller sat at the head of a 30-foot mahogany table, his face grey. She's a toxic asset, he said, bluntly. She's not just a PR problem. She's a legal one. Our ACLU case is dead in the water. Our intellectual property case, which she was scheduled to argue next month, the optics are catastrophic. We can't send the face of American racism to argue anything before the Supreme Court. She's offering to resign, another partner said, reading a text. Don't let her, a sharp-eyed litigator named Anne replied. If she resigns, she can claim duress. We fire her. We vote. We invoke the moral turpitude clause. We sever all ties. We issue a statement. We cut the limb off before the gangrene spreads. The vote was unanimous. By 9:01 a.m. Eastern Time, the statement was released. Covington & Associates has concluded its internal investigation into the incident involving our partner, Caroline Foster. The behavior captured on video is appalling, indefensible, and stands in direct opposition to the values of this firm. Ms. Foster's actions do not represent the 1,200 employees who work tirelessly for justice and equality. Effective immediately, Ms. Foster is no longer with the firm. The karma was swift, brutal, and corporate, but it wasn't finished. American Airlines publicly confirmed that her frequent flyer status, all 7 million miles of it, had been permanently revoked. The D.C. Bar Association announced it was opening an inquiry into her conduct unbecoming of a lawyer. A gala she was supposed to co-chair for a prominent D.C. museum quietly removed her name from their website. In the space of 24 hours, Caroline Foster had been surgically excised from the world she had spent 30 years building. She was an unperson. Meanwhile, in a sun-drenched, airy home in Pacific Palisades, California, Maya Hayes was sitting on a patio overlooking the ocean. Her mother, dressed in civilian clothes, a simple linen shirt and white pants, brought her a mug of tea. Maya's phone buzzed. It was an alert from the New York Times. DC lawyer fired after viral video shows altercation over first-class seat. Maya read the article. She saw the statement from Covington. She saw the quote from the airline. She saw the dissection of her own Georgetown Law hoodie. "She's been fired," Maya said quietly, showing the phone to her mother. Evelyn Hayes took the phone, read the headline, and handed it back. She sat in the chair opposite her daughter, sipping her own tea. She looked out at the Pacific, the blue-grey water stretching to the horizon. "Well," the justice said, after a long, quiet moment. "Is that it?" Maya asked. "Is that all you're going to say?" Evelyn turned her gaze, that all-powerful, analytical gaze, to her daughter. But it was soft now, filled with a deep, complex love. "Your grandfather," Evelyn began, her voice thoughtful, "used to work as a Pullman porter on the railroads. He spent 40 years of his life in a uniform, carrying the bags of men who looked at him like he was furniture. He had a law degree from Howard. Never practiced. They wouldn't let him in the room. He spent his life serving men less intelligent, less capable and less decent than him, all while they sat in the luxury cars he wasn't allowed to ride." She leaned forward. "He saved his money. He sent me to Yale. I went to Harvard Law. I got on the bench. You go to Georgetown. I put you in that first-class seat. That seat wasn't a gift. It wasn't an upgrade. It was paid for. It was paid for by your hard work. It was paid for by my hard work. And it was paid for by your grandfather's sacrifice." She reached out and put her hand on Maya's. "What happened to that woman, Caroline? That isn't the point. Her losing her job is not justice. It's a consequence. It's a corporation protecting its brand. It's a public relations decision. It is, in its own way, as cold and impersonal as her original insult." "Then, what's the justice?" Maya asked. Evelyn smiled, a true, warm smile. "The justice, baby, is you. The justice is you, sitting in that seat, in your hoodie, with your casebooks. You, existing in that space, 100% by right, and not giving an inch. The justice is that she couldn't remove you. The justice is that you are the future, and she's the past." Evelyn Hayes stood up, picking up her mug. "Your grandfather used to tell me, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. What he forgot to add is that sometimes you have to be the one to reach out and pull that arc just a little bit harder." Maya watched her mother walk back inside. She looked down at the news alert, at the story of Caroline Foster's professional ruin. Then she swiped it away, opened her case brief, and continued her work. She had exams to study for. The story, as all viral stories do, eventually faded. The news cycle moved on. But for the people involved, the consequences were permanent. Liam, the flight attendant, became a minor celebrity within American Airlines. He was given a commendation, for exemplary service and de-escalation and was personally thanked by the company's CEO. He was promoted to a purser position, leading his own international cruise. Mark, the businessman who filmed the video, saw his tech company's social media engagement spike. He wrote a popular LinkedIn post about the ROI of doing the right thing, which, while self-serving, further cemented the story into business law. Justice Evelyn Hayes, as expected, remained utterly silent on the matter. When the ACLU versus Doty case finally came before the court, Covington and Associates had indeed withdrawn. The new law firm that took the case argued it poorly. Justice Hayes, in a biting dissent from the majority, who ruled 5-4 against the ACLU, wrote a 20-page takedown of racial profiling, citing a pervasive and lazy bigotry that assumes criminality based on skin color and attire. The legal world read it as the final, brutal postscript to the entire affair. And Caroline Foster? Her hard karma was not a single, dramatic explosion. It was a slow, crushing disintegration. She was not, as Liam had threatened, cleaning toilets in Tulsa. But she was in a different kind of hell. She was in the hell of obscurity. After being fired, she was toxic. No major firm in DC, New York, or LA would touch her. The stain, as her former partner David had called it, was too great. She had committed the one unpardonable sin of her class. She had become publicly, messily, embarrassing. She was forced to sell her massive Georgetown home to cover her losses from her partnership dissolution. She moved to a smaller condo in suburban Virginia under her maiden name. She tried to rebrand. She started a consulting firm. But consulting on what? Her reputation was gone. Her connections wouldn't return her calls. The gala invitations stopped. The fundraiser seats dried up. The world she had lived for, the world of access and power, had simply locked its doors. The final quiet twist came nearly a year later. Maya Hayes, now a 3L, was flying back to DC after winning the prestigious National Mock Trial competition. She was, once again, in first class, this time on a ticket paid for by her future law firm. As she settled into her pod, a woman walked past, heading toward the back of the plane. The woman was blonde, but her hair was dull, her expensive suit replaced by a nondescript beige pantsuit. She was carrying a rolling bag and looked tired, anonymous. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Caroline Foster stared at Maya. There was no anger in her eyes, no malice, just a blank, hollow recognition. She had been on her way to a low-level consulting gig in Phoenix, a job she'd taken for a fraction of her old fees. She was in seat 34B, a middle seat in economy. Maya Hayes, future attorney at law, looked at the woman who had tried to destroy her. She felt nothing, no anger, no pity, not even triumph. She simply gave her a small, polite nod. And then, Maya Hayes put on her noise-cancelling headphones, opened her laptop, and turned her attention to the window, watching the runway as she prepared for takeoff, leaving Caroline Foster so far behind, she was already forgotten before the plane even left the ground. The ultimate karma wasn't just that Caroline Foster lost her job. It was that she became irrelevant. She tried to take away Maya's right to exist in a space, and in the end, she was the one who was erased. This story is a powerful reminder that prejudice isn't just ugly. It's a trap that ends up catching the person who sets it. The world is full of people who will judge you based on what you wear, where you're from, or the color of your skin. But poise, truth, and a mother like a Supreme Court justice, well, that's the ultimate combination. What did you think of this story? Have you ever seen someone so spectacularly misunderstand who they were talking to? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What was the exact moment you knew Caroline was finished? If you loved this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to see this. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more dramatic, real-life stories just like this one. We have new stories every week, and you won't want to miss them.